It's Election Day 2024, and you know what that means. No, it's not time to get out to vote. It's time for voter suppression to kick in Georgia. Lest them dad-burn Democrats win. Biden won Georgia in 2020 with less than 12,000 votes. And while Kemp and Raffensperger stood up to Trump, they both got to where they are in Georgia through voter suppression, and today, the Georgia Supreme Court just backed up the kind of dirty voter suppression tactics that made these two famous. Not that anyone should be surprised. The U.S. Supreme Court is absolutely, ideologically corrupt, not to mention financially corrupt. Why should Georgia be any different? In point of fact, the Georgia Supreme Court made a ruling to allow Cobb County to suppress absentee ballots, and the ruling gave no justification or reasoning. I'm going to show that ruling in just a second, but first, let's take a look at precisely what kind of skullduggery this corrupt court just authorized. Now, Cobb County is an Atlanta suburban county that includes Marietta, Mableton, Smyrna, and the famous Cumberland Mall. As a suburban Atlanta county, it delivers a higher volume of votes than most Georgia counties. Absentee ballots are therefore critical to voting integrity in Georgia. So guess when Cobb County mailed out its absentee ballots? You guessed it, just last week. And in Georgia, absentee ballots must be turned in by 7 p.m. on Election Day. And if the mailman delivers them the next day, they are not counted. So Cobb County election officials messed this up, and as a result, a state judge ordered that they accept and count ballots that are received by November 8th at 5 p.m. if those ballots are postmarked by the 5th of November. That's not particularly accommodating, but people were ordered to receive their ballots by express mail. So a reasonable but not necessarily accommodating court order was issued. But of course, Cobb County Republicans appealed that decision to the Georgia State Supreme Court. Republicans do not want absentee ballots counted because they will be a preponderance of Democratic ballots. It's just another dirty tricks campaign by Republicans who fear an honest vote because then they'd be out of power. As a result, their Republican Supreme Court buddies backed them up and overruled the lower court decision. So now, all absentee ballots must be turned in by 7 p.m. tonight. Like the post office is going to be delivering to Cobb County Election Office until 6:57 p.m. And why did the Georgia Supreme Court rule this way? Because they want Trump to win, of course. But I mean, how did they reach this decision? Let's take a look. Their ruling states, appellant's emergency motion for supersedious is granted. See Georgia Constitution of 1983, Article 6, Section 6, Supreme Court Rule 9. Consistent with OCGA subsection 21-2-386, the Cobb County Board of Elections and Registration, the board, may count only those absentee ballots received by the statutory deadline of 7 p.m. on Election Day, November 5th, 2024. So no actual explanation here, but what the court really said by sticking to the law as written is that county election boards can be woefully negligent in their responsibilities, and that the courts are powerless to correct that behavior and restore equality and justice. Cobb County could have mailed the ballots yesterday, and still no provision would have to be made. It is a ridiculous, not to mention gutless ruling that reeks of partisanship. One can't help but hear in this ruling the voice of Jim Crow and crooked Southern politics rearing its ugly head again. Now it's true, all is not lost here. Early voting in Georgia has been overwhelming, and a good reason why it has been so huge is because voters in Georgia want to defeat all the dirty tricks they know Republicans are going to try and get away with. Younger voters in Georgia have surpassed their 2020 mark. So in some degree, Georgia Democrats produced turnout because they know Republican cheating is baked into the process. The question in Georgia is the same question that has been asked for decades. Can Democratic turnout defeat Republican cheating? That's a question we'll all have to wait and see the answer to. Or we could ask an expert Georgia political guru, Newt Gingrich, but frankly, I don't want to hear an answer that starts with, frankly, followed by some bogus assertion of fantasy parading as fact. We'll just have to wait on Georgia. We'll just have to see if that overwhelming turnout by women, the black vote, Democrats, people opposing the Supreme Court decision on Roe, and all those other voters disgusted by Donald Trump will come through and make this I'm Anthony Vincent Gallo for Occupy Democrats.